What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Travis. Of course, this is TWA Motorsports, and today we continue the progress on my son's Camaro SS. So if you guys didn't know or haven't watched the last couple videos on this thing, I bought this for my son. He wanted a Camaro, and obviously, guys, it had a ton of aftermarket parts. If you've been watching, it had a single hair-on speed 76mm turbo kit, which is over there on the floor. Has a huge cam, just a bunch of stuff that we want to take off and make it more driver friendly. Right now it bucks at low speeds and it's just not very driver friendly. So we were wanting to fix that. Also, the AC is not working because one of the turbo lines rubbed through it. And actually it's the sway bar that rubbed through it. But either way, in the last video on this thing, I got all the, me and my son got the transmission out that you see over there. Obviously, we wanted to replace the clutch. It was really stiff, not going to be driver friendly. So we wanted to put a stockish clutch in it. So we bought an LS7 clutch, which you guys will see later on in this progress. But we got all the turbo stuff off. It's sitting over there on the floor besides the manifolds. But I kind of wanted to break the video at the last one after we got that stuff off because I wanted to show you guys kind of the process I would go through if we were replacing a cam in one of these things. So I know that we're a little deeper into it than what I wanted to be, but really the only things that we've removed are the water pump, if you had the stock fans here, and the AC condenser and the radiator. So if you're doing a cam swap on one of these and you want to do it in the vehicle, which I'm hoping there's no issues with, we're going to look at the top of the pistons when we get the heads off, but this will be basically a heads cam swap that we're going to be doing. Those heads are a 317 head, which back in the day, that was the way people dropped compression so they could run more boost. Now with E85, people don't do that as often. So we want to get those heads off so it's a little better performing on the low end. And we're going to slide a way smaller cam in. It is a upgraded cam, and we'll talk about that when we get to it. But I want to start here, guys, by telling you that you can leave the AC condenser in place and just swing it out of the way if your unit is full. This one had a leak, so we took it out. But you can leave it here, just take the radiator out and then be able to have somebody swing it up while you pull the cam out. But either way, we need to get the rest of this stuff apart. And I think what we're going to start with here is we're going to start with the power steering pump. If you have the better pulley, like the billet pulley, it's really cool because you can reach all the bolts behind it. Obviously, we have the stock pulley, so I'm going to show you guys kind of the way I sneak around that. We're going to get that out of the way. I'm not going to unhook it just because I don't want more of a mess. We're going to kind of move it over here out of the way so we don't have to actually break into that system. And then we're going to work on getting the manifolds off, the valve covers, probably the intake, and then the heads. So let's get started. So if you guys are wondering like why my son's not helping today, he'll be in and out because he is mowing. So anyway, let's start with getting the power steering pump off. Guys, it's 15mm, and there's a couple ways to do this. I use a swivel to get to the 15 back behind the lines here. Okay, this one is relatively easy to get to, but the one behind here, years ago, after doing a couple of these cam swaps, I bought a cheap wrench, a cheap 15, and you can see I've shaved it down. And the reason I do that is so we can reach back behind here and loosen this guy up. And so what we're going to do is we're gonna alternate through all of these, starting with this one back here, loosening it up, and going through kind of loosening each one up as you go. The reason we're doing that is because obviously we don't have access to get back here unless we pull the pump pulley off, and we don't really want to do that. So let's go ahead and get all these 15s out. There's only 3 of them. I will tell you guys that I couldn't get my little wrench that I made back there. I got it back there, but it's too thin to get any, whoever put this in last really torqued it down. So I used a regular wrench to break it loose. I was able to get it back there, but as you pull it out, you have less and less room. So that's really where this comes in handy. So now that we got that one loose, like I said, we'll go ahead. You can take this one completely out. In my opinion, guys, I think you should just work them a little bit at a time though. You give this bottom one a couple turns, and then this one a couple turns, that one a couple. It takes a while to do. So, and then, like I said, whoever put this on must have put it on with an impact because they're only supposed to go down to like 37 foot-pounds, and every one of them is ridiculously tight. See that? That is way too tight. So I may have to use a wrench to break this bottom one loose also, if I can get it in there. Yeah. We'll get it started with the wrench, and then hopefully I'll be able to get it the rest of the way out. There we go. Let's get this thing off here. So I'm to the point where I've got all of them except the one behind it out. And guys, the other two you'll be able to completely remove. This one will stay in. And that's the tough part, is starting it back, you know, when you're coming back together. And this is a tedious process, let me tell you. And we may upgrade to like a turn one style that's hollow. I don't know, we'll see when we go back together. Well, I thought I was close. They're pretty long. There we go. All right, so we're just gonna kind of fold this thing out of the way. I'm gonna try to route the power steering lines over and get it kind of up here up front. I don't know if you guys can see this, but I've got a bungee cord holding this up just so it doesn't drain a bunch of fluid all over everything. But now, guys, I'm gonna cut a few more of these zip ties. Let's go ahead and unplug the coolant temp sensor from the front side of the head here. And then this is just a one wire alternator. I'd really like to unplug it. I may get a clip and go ahead and unplug it. It's just so I can have, that's the only thing left here on this line, so I can kind of get this wiring out of the way. But be careful because it's only a one wire hookup. It's really easy to pull this out. So I'm gonna go ahead, unclip it, get it out of the way, and then we'll start on this manifold on this side, which should just be, I don't think, it doesn't have locking fasteners in it, so it should just be 8mm to get those guys out. Maybe it's a 10. Looks like an 8 though. 8 or 10 to get those out. And there's really no good way for me to show you guys, but kind of how I like to do it is I like to start at the back, start at the front, work my way towards the middle. And when you get to the middle, it just, to me, it gives you the ability to hold one side or the other and balance it so you're not like running the threads as you're pulling the last ones out with the weight of the manifold against you. So that's why I do it the way I do. You can see I got that wiring harness out of the way, kind of draped over here behind the strut for the hood. Okay, I completely forgot, guys, we need to take those spark plugs out. So on these cars, I've got a little short extension here, generally what I use. And so sometimes you need it, sometimes you don't. It's kind of one of those things, generally I break it loose with the socket and or the ratchet on the end, and then I just unscrew it by hand if you're able to. So we do need to go ahead and get the spark plugs out before we go taking the manifold bolts out. Look at those things. Definitely gonna have to order some spark plugs. Wow. They are soaked in oil. Look, I mean, I have a feeling that that return pump, sometimes, that's why I don't love the return pump style turbo kits. So basically, guys, there's a return pump down there below, and because of the way the turbo sets, it sets so far down that it can't gravity feed the oil out of it. So it has to have a pump to return that oil to the oil pan. And so I think sometimes those things, for one, if they fail, you're hosed. And then two, because you don't know if they fail until it's too late, generally. There's not any kind of light or anything that comes on. But then the other thing is, I think sometimes they pump a little too much oil. And so I'm hoping that that's turbo related and not engine related, but we're not gonna know that really until we get the head off and make sure there's no issues. Like I said, the cylinder walls being scored up and whatnot. So I'm gonna continue. That was just the first spark plug I wanted to show you guys. I've got two of the exhaust manifold bolts out at this point. Like I said, I got the very back one, the very front one. That's the way I like to do it. Like I said, that way you can hold one side or the other if you don't have extra help. Now, I will tell you guys, trying to put these in by yourself is gonna be a problem. It is nice if you have somebody underneath kind of steadying it while you put one into place, which you'll see when we go back together with the headers. But yeah, I don't think these are aftermarket. They might be, because they do not look stock, but we're probably going to replace these. It's always good measure. A lot of times these are prone to break in the LS stuff, especially in the trucks. It seems to be more of an issue in the trucks. But if you break one, like in this situation, it's not a big deal because we're replacing the head. You know, if the head breaks off on one of these bolts, it's not a big deal. But we're going to continue. I'll basically show you guys once I get the manifold out. I don't know whether I'm going to be able to thread it out the top. I have a feeling I'm going to have to lift it up and pull it out of the bottom. Got that thing loose, and here's what I can tell you. Not easy. It's definitely going to have to come out of the bottom, which I figured that'd be the case anyway. But got it off there. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm going to have to take that out before I get to the head bolts. So what I think I'll do at this point is we'll go to the other side and do the exact same thing. Got some plug wires to remove there. On this side, I feel like I did the easy side first, don't get me wrong. But this side's still not as bad. I think this side we might be able to sneak up through this, through the front. But either way, let's get that one out of place. That way, if we do have to go underneath, we can just snag them out both at the same time. And then the other thing, I feel like the downpipe down there, I couldn't get out because of the sway bar. So we may have to loosen the sway bar also in order to route the downpipe out down there. But I'll show you guys underneath once we get this other manifold loose. One other thing you're gonna have to take out on this side before the manifold will come out is the dipstick tube. Now, there is a 15 millimeter that goes into the head right above the manifold, and I've already got it out here. So that's what that guy looks like. And then once you get that out, you should be able to just pull this guy up and out of place. So, holy cow, I'm gonna put a new O-ring on that, I think, before we put it back together, but I'm gonna clean this off, set it aside for now. Got that manifold off. It was actually a little easier than the other side. You know, I was kind of dreading it, but I do have an O2 sensor hooked up on one of the pipes down there still, so I need to get that unplugged. But guys, I think at this point, I'm gonna see if we can lift it up and just get the whole turbo set up out of the way. I still have to get this guy down here, that pump that I was talking about, the scavenge pump. I need to get it out, and then we need to see what we need to do to get the downpipe out. Like I said, I may have to loosen up the sway bar, but let's lift this thing up and let's have this whole turbo kit out at this point. Now you can see a couple things I need to undo. Like I said, I need to get that O2 sensor unhooked. I need to cut some zip ties to get these lines off. Just a couple 10 millimeters holding this pump on. It's already, I disconnected the power when we were up top. And guys, I think I can sneak all this out. Like I said, though, I may have to undo the sway bar. And I think what I will do, instead of undoing the end, I don't know, we may have to undo the end links and the D-rings here. But we'll just have to see. I do see several zip ties that we're gonna have to cut off and try to thread some stuff out of the way, but it's not too bad. And look, we're gonna get a lot more room as we start getting some of this stuff off. But I want to knock this out so the turbo kit, like I said, is completely out of the way before we go back up top and work on the intake and the heads. The really good news is I did not have to take the sway bar loose. I just had to move my little drip tray here back, and I was able to finagle that thing out of there. So it's official, all the turbo stuff is off. It is on the floor, guys. It will be for sale. I think I've got a buyer right now, but who knows? You never know with that stuff. I will tell you, I think what I'm going to do just really quick is I need to get the crank bolt loose, and I don't think that my impact is strong enough to pop an intake or a crank bolt. And we already took the flywheel off. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna put the flywheel back up in place and bolt it down, and then use my flywheel locking tool, which I'll show you guys what it looks like. I'm gonna hit it real quick just to see, but I'm positive my impact will not pull that thing out. It's under a ton of pressure. I wanna say it's like 240 foot-pounds or more, and it's got Loctite on it. So I doubt that it will do it, but I'll try real quick before I put that on. But if not, I'll show you guys what I'm talking about when I say my flywheel locking tool back here in the back. Okay, so I'm a little excited. It took it right out. Look at this. How crazy is that? So now we don't have to waste our time putting the flywheel back in place. But guys, if you have, let's say you're not taking your transmission out, right? So you don't have the transmission off. either an automatic or a 6-speed. In a 6-speed, generally you can put it back in 4th gear, and that'll lock it up where you can get that bolt loose, okay, by hand or with a breakover bar. However, on an automatic, there is a little tool that you guys have seen me use in the past that goes in place of the starter and locks up against the flywheel so you can loosen that up. But hey, maybe it's this new battery I got that gives this thing more power, but I literally just popped it and it came right out. So I'm kind of surprised. But I'm thinking if there's anything else I want to remove while I'm down here. I don't think there is. I might go ahead and pull that pulley off. I've got a pulley remover. I'm gonna go grab it real quick, and we may just go ahead and yank that crank pulley off. No, I take that back. Let's just leave it for now. I just wanted to get that bolt loose. Let's drop this thing back down and work on the intake and the heads. Now, before we take the 8mm out that hold this, there's a couple things you guys need to know. For one, you have 2 plugs in the back. You can see I've already unplugged them. You have your map sensor, and then there should be this vacuum line, which comes over to this over here. If you have your original air injection, there will also be another vacuum line on that map sensor. I'm assuming it's capped off. Besides that, very back, you need to pull your brake booster line, which we did in the last video actually. So at this point, we need to take all the 8mm out. There should be 10 of them. You can see them right here. Because my fuel rail's not on here, it makes it a little easier for you guys to see. We'll take all 10 of those out now. With that being said, guys, you do not have enough room from this guy back, from the cowl back, to sneak those bolts out. Might be able to get this one, might be able to get one of these on this side, but the very back 4, so those 2 back there where that bracket is, which will come off with this, and these 2 back in the back, you're gonna have to get some blue tape, is generally what I use, or rubber bands, and wrap around them. So you'll pull them up, wrap something around them so they stay up out of the way and don't fall back down. And then you should be able to sneak this thing out. You don't want them dangling down because inevitably they're gonna catch as you're lifting this thing up and pulling it out. But I'm gonna go ahead and loosen them up, and then I will show you guys what I'm talking about once I've got them taped up. I actually was able to get all of them out except that one back in the back, and you can see what I'm talking about. Just pulled it up, put some blue tape around it, and now we're ready to pull it out. So get your brake booster line, ready to access. There is a oil sending unit back there that generally snaps off if you don't clear the brake booster line. Okay, so they're really flimsy, especially if the car has any age to it. I mean, this car's low mileage, but the abuse it's probably been through, it's probably going to be broken off or break off when we bring this out. But at this point, guys, I'm going to put you back up here on the tripod, and let's see if this thing is loose and we can get it out of here. These things are always just covered in oil. Hey, I didn't snap it off. Got that thing out of here, and these generally are just coated in oil, guys. It's gonna need some new intake or gaskets. We're definitely gonna put those in, but yeah, that's out of the way. Now that we have the intake off, I am gonna go ahead and start with these 8mm that hold the valve covers on. I gotta get an electric or a battery powered ratchet, guys. I know I've been saying that for a long time, but in these areas like this where I can't get my impact, it would sure make things a lot faster anyway. So we'll get these off or loose, get this thing out of the way, and take a look at our rockers. They should be 8mm as well. Now I do know this thing is said to have a trunnion upgrade, which means they press the center of the rockers apart. Pretty common on the LS stuff. I've never had one of those fail, but the bigger the cam, the more likely they are to fail because they can only go so far in factory spec. So when you get a bigger cam, sometimes that more lift that it has, you have the chance of those needle bearings failing and falling in the motor. But either way, we'll take a look at it once I get this off. Let's take a look at what we got here. So normally, guys, it's definitely got a trunnion upgrade. I can tell there. It's got dual springs, you can definitely tell that, but those are not the factory bolts. Normally they'd be 8mm, so somebody upgraded the bolts, which is fine. They look like they are a hex head. I don't know what size. Normally they would be 8mm, but I'm gonna go ahead and knock those out all the way down. I've got this valve cover loose as well. Actually, all the bolts are out of it. Let's pull it off. You can see it's definitely had gaskets before, but I'm gonna replace them. I'm picky about that, guys. If you got something apart that's used and the gaskets are, you know, not overpriced, then replace them. But let's see if we can get these out. I'm just gonna go through, loosen them all up. I'd love to use my impact on the ones that I can reach, but we'll do it by hand, or at least get them loose by hand. Then maybe I can put a swivel on for the back ones. They're actually coming loose pretty easy. You guys can hear every time I tilt the motor, coolant comes falling out of the water pump holes. But, like I said, I'll probably do this and then grab my swivel. They're just, with my swivel on the impact I want to use, it would just fly apart if I tried to do that here. But these are pretty long, so I don't really want to thread them all out by hand. There we go. All right, let's get those things out of place. You can see what I'm talking about here. I generally leave the bolts in because I pull that the rocker stand out with it. So once you get them loose, you want to make sure they're threaded all the way out. And I really want to lift that rocker stand out all as one piece, trying to keep the bolts in place as I do it like that. Of course, we lost one, but see what I'm talking about. We're gonna set these aside. Yeah, those are aftermarket bolts. Maybe ARP actually, they are. Now that we've got those out, look guys, if you were doing a just cam only swap, you could, you're gonna have to do to this point. Obviously if you've not taken the heads off, but I like to, when I'm doing heads, I like to take the lifters out generally and take a look at them. They're aftermarket as well, and these are Texas Speed 3.750. We may have to order some new push rods. Actually, I think we'll need 740s, but anyway, we got the push rods out. Now I'm gonna concentrate on getting the other rockers out on the other side. I'm also gonna take these two 10mm out for this crossover coolant tube. If you guys have an LS1, you're gonna have two more in the back. On the LS6 style intake, there's only two up front. There's some controversy whether that causes issues with those back two cylinders staying cool. I don't know. They make steam port kits that you can run if you have issues with that. For the power level that we're gonna be doing, guys, I don't think it's necessary. So we're just gonna leave it as is, but I am gonna get this out of the way real quick. Now that we've got the push rods out, a couple different ways you can do this, guys. Mine's gonna be a little bit different because it's got ARP head studs on it, so I've gotta find what fits. Normally, I believe it's an 11 or a 10 on the inside head, and then I believe it's a 15 or an 18 on the center and then the outer. But like I said, this has ARP studs, and my goal is to just undo the bolts and the washers, use a magnet, drag them off, and get the heads off with leaving the studs in place if I have enough room. And the reason I want to do that is I don't want to clean out the bolt holes. When you take out the torque to yield bolts that the factory put in, when you take the head off, you're going to have all that coolant run down in those holes, and you can't just run your new bolts down in there. You got to clean all that crap out, otherwise you're not going to get proper torque specs. You could smash that water into there, and so that's a long, tedious process that I don't want to do necessarily. So we're going to see about that. But the other thing I was going to tell you about, I'm going to take a 3/4 inch wrench and take off this coolant temp sensor that's in the front of the head here, and then there should be two 15mm on the back side of the head holding some wire loom, as well as the grounds. There's ground straps back there. Now, since we're on a lift, I could lift it up and do that from the bottom, and I may end up doing that, but I'm gonna attempt to use my ratcheting 15 and see if I can reach back there and get them. They're generally not really tight, but they are gonna be on the back side of this head, and I think there's one here, and there may be two on the other side. I don't remember, it's been a minute. But like I said, you could access those from the bottom if you have issues. The fact that my transmission is out is gonna make it a little harder because the motor has rocked back. I may have to have somebody come out here and pull on the front pulley assembly like this, or maybe I can do it while I'm loosening those up so we can get that out of place. I got that loose, and you can see how loose our wiring is here now, so we're good as far as getting that side out. Now I just got to get this other one. And guys, I actually think this one may be a little easier on the bottom side. I don't know. I can see one here. I think it has two. We'll just have to see here, but I'll let you guys know here in a second which, if there's two back there. For some reason, I feel like there's two on the driver's side. I was able to get both of them from the top. Driver's side was the short one, passenger side was the long one, and I wrote that on my little bag that I'm keeping all the nuts and bolts in. So now we should have all this harness loose, and I'm gonna go ahead and unplug this guy just to get it out of the way. But I think we're good there, guys. So now we can tackle these head bolts, which, like I said, are gonna be different than what you guys have. So I'm gonna see what sizes I need and go ahead and start threading those out. I'm gonna start with all the ones up top, you know, the easy ones, and then we'll work our way down to the ones on the bottom. For these particular ARP studs, it's an 11 and it's a 12 point, guys. So you need to make sure you get a 12 point socket. Otherwise, it's not gonna be fun. And these generally aren't torqued down too tight. We'll get all these out and then move on to the bigger ones. Seems like my coolant block-off tubes in the back are in the way of the back ones, so I may have to take those 10s out. Remember, here in the front of the head, we had that issue. Well, it wasn't an issue, but we needed to take them. I wanted to take them off. Once I got all those off, I used a magnet to get both the washers and the bolts out, or the nuts off. And 13 millimeter 12 point is what the rest of them are. And so guys, you're gonna have 5 in the center of the head. You're gonna have 5 down the side of the block. And that's gonna take a little more time because some of them are a little harder to reach, but we're gonna get those next, and hopefully everything goes smooth here. So here's the moment of truth, guys. I've got all the bolts out, or the nuts off the studs on the passenger side. Used a magnet to get all the washers and nuts off the outside, so the ones up here and the ones down below, but you can't quite get to the washers on the inside. I use that magnet to get the nut off the top, but the washers, we're just gonna have to grab those out once we get the head out of place. So you're gonna have to search for them. It sucks, but there's just no good way to get them out, because when you're putting them together with assembly lube, they get kind of sticky. So at this point, let's see if we can pop this head off. I can hear it leaking, the coolant anyway. Hear that? Woo, that is on there. I'm hoping we have enough room, guys, to make this happen. I think we've got it. That head's really sticking there. There we go. Woo! I don't know, we may run into the back here. I don't know if it's gonna happen or not. Yep, we got it. All right, I really want to check out those. Set this here for now. I really want to check, and I'm going to go ahead and grab our washers actually. But I want to check out the pistons. I'm going to pull you guys off the tripod, and we'll get the light over there and take a look at them. So let's look over here and hope we don't see a busted ring land. No. Everything looks good. Cylinder walls look pretty good. I mean, they have some wear, but they're still, I don't know, guys. I think we're good. I see some junk that just fell down in there when the head came off, but I'm okay with this. I'm going to use my, man, it looks pretty good. I'm going to use my scope, or actually it's a mirror, to look at that back one because I can't quite see all of it, but I just want to make sure that we're good. I still think we are, though. Everything looks fine. You can see now we got both heads off. Okay, so something I discovered that's a little alarming, and I don't even know where I put it. It looks like in the lifter, now look, I don't know if it fell there. I've got to lift this thing up and look for a couple of the washers that fell underneath, but it looks like a piece of the center spring. Now those are dual spring setup. It looks like one of the center springs was setting in the lifter tray. Now, like I said, I don't know if it was in there in the head. I don't know if it's been in the lifter tray for a while. This motor made no noise, so I don't think so. All the cylinders seem to look okay on this side as well. So guys, I think we're gonna rock it. I have a machine shop here local to me, and one of the guys actually lives just down the road. I may have him come take a peek at the cylinder walls and see what he thinks. They don't look like brand new with, you know, great cross hatching, but they still look really good. And I think we're probably fine, but I want to have him maybe look at it before I do that. So either way, I'm going to lift this thing up, see if I can find the washers that I dropped down below. I'm missing just a few of them, as well as a few of the center, for the studs there. I'm missing a few of those bolts. So either way, I know that I heard them fall down below, but let's get that done and then we'll move on to the camshaft. At this point, guys, it's been a couple days since I last took the heads off. I think I told you guys earlier in this video, or maybe in another video, this had some 317 heads on it. That really lowers the compression. This thing was a real dog out of boost, and so I wanted to put either a stock set of 241 heads, or if I could find a set of 243 heads, which are the LS6 heads, I would do that. Well, I had a set of 243 heads that I've been saving over on the shelf. I bought about 2 years ago in a Facebook Marketplace deal, and I knew eventually I would use them on something, but I thought, well, we'll just have them cleaned up and put on here. So I took them to my machine shop and said, hey, can you guys clean these up? Put the new valve springs that I got that came with the cam on there while you're doing it, and then I'll put them on. I wasn't gonna port them, nothing like that, just clean them up, put new valve seals in, stuff like that, just make sure they're in good working order. Well, he said, look, we'll check them first to make sure there's no issues. We wanna, they put them, basically they pressure test them to make sure there's no cracks or any issues or whatnot. So he calls me the next day and says, hey, bad news, they are cracked. And he said, not only are they cracked, he goes, I don't know that we've ever seen anything like this. You got to see this video. So he shows me a video of while they were testing them, the places they were leaking, they were cracked. He said it almost looks like they had set outside, gotten wet and frozen. Now look, I bought these 2 years ago. I have no way of calling the guy and saying, hey, why did you rip me off? I paid $400 for these heads. It just sucks because whether he knew it or not, I don't know, but they're bad. So I said, well, do you have any extras? He said, no, LS heads are kind of, as soon as we get them, they're gone. I trust this guy. He does this, probably been doing it for 30 plus years, knows his stuff. So I got to looking for another set of heads. I thought about just putting the 317s back on, but then I got to thinking, no, it's still gonna be doggy out of boost. I don't wanna do that. I wanna put a set of 241s or 243s. Well, I found another set from another local machine shop, called a couple buddies of mine. They know them, they say they're reputable. So I said, look, here's the situation. I got these 317s I do not need. Would you take them on trade? So they gave me a couple $100 for the 317s, which is good because I would probably struggle to sell them for that much. And they gave me a set of 243s, which are actually on the other side of the Trans Am over there. They've been gone through, pressure tested. They have new stainless valves in them, new valve springs, even though they're not the right valve springs that I need for this cam. But I picked those up just a minute ago. And while I was there picking those up, drove them back to the other machine shop who was doing the first set of heads, and to pick up my valve springs because I had dropped those off, the ones that came with the cam. Hopefully this is all making sense. But I said, well, do you guys, is there a way you can change these on the bench because I don't have the tool to compress the valve springs on a bench. I've got the one to do it on a car where you screw something in the where the spark plug goes, but that takes forever. So he actually swapped the springs out for me. So we've got the right springs on the right heads, a good set of heads. And I said, hey, since you live close, would you mind coming out and taking a look at these cylinder walls on this thing? See if there's anything that you would address while you've got it apart. He said, absolutely. So he came out here, and guys, this is where it sucks. And look, I knew this going in. Look, turbo kit, stock car. You don't know who built it. You don't know who tuned it. But the very first thing he said was it needs a set of rings. And so if you look at these pistons, if you notice the center of them is all carbon built up, but the outer is washed out. He said that tells me it needs a set of rings. He said the cylinder walls look pretty good. He said he didn't think there was much there, but he said it's gonna smoke if you put it back together. He said it needs a set of rings. He said what I would do if it were my kids is I would pull this motor out, I would just hone it, I would clean it up, I would put new bearings in it, new rings, and put it back together. He said then it won't smoke. He said I really don't think, he said we may polish the crank if you can polish it, but he's like that's what I would do. Or he said I would buy a 5.3 or something. So that's where we're at right now. So I'm extremely frustrated. I just want to push this thing off the lift at this point, but we're gonna keep plugging away. I'm gonna finish the video here for now because we are gonna pull this out. We're not a long way from doing it. It just sucks because I wanted to show you guys a heads cam swap in the car, but it's just not in the cards, guys. So we are gonna have to yank this motor out, which you'll see in the next video on this. We're really close anyway. All the wiring's pretty much off. We just got to get the AC off and the alternator, and that's pretty much it. Undo the bolts on the K-member. But hey, look, I would rather do it right than just put it back together and it smoke and be, it just progressively get worse. It just sucks that it had to be this way. But like I said, the guy that I bought this car from did say it used a little oil, but I was hoping that was more PCV related than it was ring related. But it happens. We're still in this car really good. So even once he said it could be anywhere from $500 to $1,000 to do the things that he said they would do. He's going to work me up a quote and get back with me. But look, it happens. It's part of buying used stuff, and especially modified used stuff. That's pretty common. But anyway, guys, if you have the struggle like I do, of everything just going wrong at the same time, let me know in the comments down below. I'm going to try to stay positive about it, even though I just want to kick this thing off the lift right now, push it in the corner. Not going to do that. We're going to get it finished up for my son. He's excited about it. But we may take a couple days off to vent, maybe work on something else that's more exciting or that just doesn't have any stress involved. But if you do like this video, guys, like always, smash the thumbs up button. Of course, if you are not subscribed, go down there, hit the subscribe button. And while you're down there doing all that, ring that bell icon. That notifies you every single time we drop a new video. But stay tuned to see this thing come together.